Jude finishes his description of these ungodly people who had slipped in among God's family, the actual true followers of Jesus. And he says they're grumblers and complainers living only to satisfy their desires. Such a big deal. I'm tempted to go back to it and crack it open again, but I think you get the point. Last thing I'll say about that is we live in a culture that from the time a kid is little, it sends him a message, or her the message, that the point is get what you want. Years and years ago, I think it was Burger King who had the jingle for their TV and radio ads was "Have it your way." Well, what they meant was you had freedom to say you wanted certain things on and didn't want certain things on your hamburger. Well, that's not bad. There's a lot of margin for getting and doing what you want. The problem is what you want is not always right. You think about kids. Young kids don't know what they need. They only know what they want. And if they only get what they want and not what they need, what happens is they grow up to be brats. Those are the kids that teachers from kindergarten or preschool on have to struggle with because they make their life so miserable. And, oh, by the way, my experience in speaking with teachers is that these kids' parents also make their lives miserable because they can't even imagine anything their kid would want would not be right or good. So here's the thing. The destination for having as your only motivation, your only driving mission, if it is to satisfy your desires, to get what you want, the destination for that is ugly. Okay, talked about it last time. I'll just leave it at that and say, you don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. But we do have this proclivity for it. And so I think when you have a susceptibility to something, then it's wise to set up defenses against it. He goes on, they brag loudly about themselves, and they flatter others to get what they want. Okay. This is not a very attractive picture. These are not the kind of people you want to go on an extended vacation with. You've been around people that brag about themselves, right? But it doesn't take long for me to have all I can stand of that. Certainly all I want happens quickly. Don't brag to me about you. And I don't want to, there are times when I catch myself, but I really don't want to brag about me to you. What is a brag? Well, now there are times when it's fine to share something that gave you satisfaction and fulfillment. I don't think that's wrong. I think brag has to do with look at me, how good I am, how much better than the next guy I am. At the heart of bragging is, it's not rocket science. At the heart of bragging is pride. Now, Paul writes, if I'm going to brag, the only thing I'm going to brag about is the grace of God. The grace that saved me and keeps me and empowers me to stay on the journey. I will gladly boast about, brag about those things. But the rest, No, it's not about, it can't be. It can't be about me. Now, I think there are times when it's probably a good thing to share what God's up to in your life. And if it's blessing, then who gets the credit? Who does that go back to? Well, it goes back to Him, not me. I didn't do a bunch of really good stuff, and so I get a bunch of really good stuff. That's backwards. I got a bunch of really good stuff, and that motivates me to do a bunch of really good stuff. NIV says they follow their own evil desires. They boast about themselves and flatter others for their own advantage. Well, as if boasting was not bad enough and didn't wear thin quickly enough, I've found this generally to be true. Boastful people tend to use the moments they have in other people's lives to gain advantage for themselves. I think about that in leadership. There's a lot of really ugly terminology for what that does and is. These people, not only do they boast about themselves, but they flatter others for their own advantage. They're manipulative, and they will manipulate other people to get what they want. One of the biggest, most universal tools is flattery. It's really hard to not kind of at least open your point of view up to somebody who tells you something they like about you, or something they think is good about you, this is when it becomes flattery, what you're better than somebody else at. I know she got the promotion. Oh, she shouldn't have, because you are way better than she is. I know he got the spot. I know he got the call up, but it shouldn't have happened because you are way better than he is. I suppose there are times, yes, when this is true. Be careful. Be careful when you hear that thing, flattery. Because on the other side of flattery, there is this thing, which is manipulation. I don't like to be manipulated. And when it happens, it ticks me off. I do not like it. Most of the time, I don't realize I'm being manipulated until after the fact. Now, there are some times that the flattery is so blatant and so inflated, I can smell it, right? I wish I had. Remember, you have to be old to remember the TV series Wonder Woman, and if you were into comic books, she's I think a Marvel hero, but at any rate, a superhero. And one of the things that she had always hanging on her belt was the lasso of truth. She could lasso somebody with that lasso of truth, and they could not lie to her. They were compelled to tell the truth. I so often wish I had a lasso of truth. I don't. What I have is a prefrontal cortex. It's a brain that was designed and set up by my father to be able to evaluate data as it came in and make evaluations and then make adjustments on the basis of my evaluations. Everybody's got one, but not everybody has trained it to evaluate well. When you're little, you don't have enough data logged in to be able to decipher what is true and what is not true. I this is a heartbreaking thing for me, but I see it a lot when there are children involved in a divorce. A child they do not have the background, they do not have even the hardware in their brain to be able to connect the dots of mommy and daddy don't like each other, and now mommy or daddy is leaving. Something had to cause it. It must have been me. That's how they connect it. I suppose there are cases where the kid is responsible for the divorce. It'd be less than 1/2 of 1% of the time. But kids feel this. If you're the child of divorce, even though I know of folks who their parents divorced and they weren't little kids, but they still felt that. They felt this guilt that they didn't do enough to keep their parents together. You did. You couldn't have fixed that. It's not within your power. Now, your prefrontal cortex, this front part of your brain, is right behind your forehead. That's the part of your brain that we call it the executive command and decision-making center. This is where you evaluate, is the data you're getting true or false? And then beyond that, what is its meaning? And then the last thing is, what, if anything, should I do about it? This is pretty important for Bible study, right? It's your prefrontal cortex that processes the words you read in Scripture. It's also your prefrontal cortex that helps you ask the question of, is that true or false? I'll give you a quick example of this true-false dichotomy. It has to do with the book of Job. Job's friends came and offered tons of advice. Some of it was sprinkled with enough truth to sound like the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but it was not the truth. And it wasn't until the end of the entire book of Job that God speaks. And he addresses these, what I'm going to call horrible comforters. And it's clear. What they thought was true was not true. Okay, these things. So I'm pretty careful about quoting the book of Job because not everything that humans said in the book of Job represents truthfully the nature and work of God in the world. But the scripture is true. Right now, I just yesterday or day before yesterday, I finished in my morning reading the book of Ecclesiastes, a book of truth, but it's from the perspective of a jaded guy in my age category who was so wealthy, so rich, started out very wise that he tried everything he wanted to. And the key phrase in the entire book is meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Is that true? No. And I have to have further background, and for me that means looking at the rest of Scripture and evaluating, is everything meaningless? No. But most everything is temporary. So, okay, is it true? If it is, then the third question is, what should I be doing about this? That activity happens here in your prefrontal cortex. If it isn't exercised, it doesn't have the strength to help you follow through on things that you know need to be done. These people, they try to leverage the fact that a whole lot of people have an under-exercised prefrontal cortex, and the way they do it is in the form of manipulation. Okay, now turn the mirror around and look in it in your own life for your own evaluation. on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you boast about yourself? Probably if you're married, ask your spouse. They may be able to give you a better number than you might come up with for yourself. And secondly, ask yourself, do I manipulate to get what I want? Do I flatter people just to get what I want? Or can I speak truth and hope and life into people's lives to help them reach outward and reach forward for God's best in their life? There's a big difference between those two things. Okay, overtime, gotta quit. I'll see you next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.